and a new interview. This time I am going to interview Javi from Endling, and he's going to explain everything about Endling. Javi, welcome in the studio. Could you shortly introduce yourself?
Well, to be here. Yeah, I'm Javi. I'm CEO and programmer as well at Herobeat Studios. We have recently released Endling Extinction Forever. It was released like 2 months ago.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So I mean, we have been developing Endling for 3 years and a half. It has been a great adventure for us because it's the first game by Herobeat Studios. Although we have been working before in other games. Yeah.
How big is the studio?
We are 20 people.
20 people working 3.5 years on the game. So how did you came together?
We have evolved quite a lot because when we started Endling, it was going to be a side project. I mean, it was something that we could develop while we were working in our other jobs. We were working for other companies developing video games, but we joined a video game incubator here at Barcelona, Spain, where we are based. Suddenly, we got involved in all the development process and decided to quit our jobs and start working full-time on Endling. And we were 2 people by that time. So yeah, once we had like the first demo and we realized that the project was very interesting for many people, we decided to get all in and look for funding and started hire people. Eventually we found ourselves being 20 people. And
if I'm correct, is it that you were with 2 people, you and a friend were working as a side project on this, and later on, I don't know in what kind of time frame we are talking, you invited more people to help with the project?
That's right, yeah. We were 2 former colleagues. I had been working with Pablo, who is the art director of Herobeat Studios, for some years in another company. After like 6 months or so, we decided to start working full-time on Endling. And well, the process of getting funding for the rest of the development and to be able to start hiring people and all that was very, very hard for us. We were building demos and playables and vertical slides for almost 1 year and a half. But at the end, well, it worked. So yeah, that's when we signed with our publisher, Herobeat, so that they could like fund the rest of the game and bring us to the release.
So you say that it was quite challenging to find a publisher, right? So how did you find your publisher?
We had to self-fund a demo. It was like super short, 5 to 10 minutes of demo, because it would have been easier if we had some previous work, you know, because that's always very interesting for any publisher, like being able to prove that you have released games before. But it was not our case. We had been working for other companies, but never as a studio. So Endling was technically our first game. It was a risk for any publisher. So luckily for us, well, Herobeat saw that demo. We have like the Steam page where we were trying to gather like wish lists and stuff like that, and they liked the demo, and we met them at Gamescom. Well, that's where it all started.
But the Gamescom not like before Corona, I guess.
It was the 2018.
So, you know, a long time ago. Yes.
Yeah.
And like, how did you start with this idea? Because it's a very emotional game, so I think there should be a big reason behind, right?
Yes. Well, we have been always worried about this topic, extinction of species, and not only that, but also social impact issues, like how the environmental issues will affect human society in the future. We were working on games that had nothing to do with that. We really wanted to deliver some kind of a meaningful message through video games. So that's where I pitched the project to Pablo, my colleague, and he liked the idea. I mean, he was in a similar situation than me, like wanting to create something meaningful. He was not doing that by that time current job.
Okay, and was it immediately clear for you that it would be a fox?
No, the idea of being a fox came later. I mean, we knew that we wanted to tell the story through the eyes of an innocent animal because we didn't want to create a game where the main character could change things, because we wanted to show how the future could look in the following 50 to 100 years, and not to allow the player to change that situation, but just to be a spectator of the story. So that's why we decided the main character to be an animal, but it could have been any other animal. But for design reasons, we decided that a fox could be a really nice choice, because foxes, they have their own predator, and also they can hunt, so there are prey for them. They are in a middle ground where you can use them from a gameplay perspective very very well, because you can hunt other animals and you have to avoid other dangers. We wanted the player to experience adventure where the player could visit different places. For instance, in Endling, well, you start in a snowy place and eventually you get some place very very dry, and we wanted to use a very adaptable animal so it could fit in the fantasy of being a fox and being anywhere, because foxes can be basically, I mean, red foxes are super adaptable. And of course, if we wanted to show a future where even foxes are in the verge of extinction, well, you can imagine then how bad is it for the rest of animals.
Yeah, like for the gameplay, it felt sometimes that it was randomized what kind of event was triggered, or was there like a scripted following, or was it randomized? Because sometimes some roads were locked, sometimes other roads were not locked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there is some randomization in the events, although we added like a linear story, some progression that you could follow. There is like a sandbox part of the game where you can do whatever you want and explore. You will most of the events, well, I would say like 90% of the events are completely optional. I mean, if you don't want to see them, they will happen nevertheless, and you will miss them. But there are some events that are part of the main progression of the game. So yeah, we have this mix between sandbox and linear story.
Yeah, I missed only that your cubs learn to use the crawling things. I don't know what I missed. I guess an event. So that's sad.
There are 9 skills for the cubs.
9. Oh jeez, I must have lost. Oh my gosh! And then one died that had a skill, and I was like, no. And then I wanted also, because even you are like, oh, please, other cub, do the same, like please. And yeah. It's like, no.
No, once a cub learns a skill, it will be the only cub being able to do that skill. So if you lose a cub, it's not only an emotional shock because you are losing something very cute. That, I mean, if you lose one of your cubs and it happens that cub has a skill, that you lose that skill forever. Because there is permadeath and only one cub can learn one skill. It will develop further, so maybe you will start losing chances to get a skill. So it's the impact of losing a cub, because they can starve to death or they can get hand down by some predator. It's double, because it's an emotional impact and also it affects the gameplay a lot.
Yeah, that's what I noticed. I was like, no, not this cup. Just take the other one. Is it also generated that the cup with most skills are dying? So that's... No, that's just bad luck. Damn it. But it became easier when you just have one cup, so then you don't need that much food.
Yeah, well, but at the same time, the cups are very useful, because if you progress in the game, they will start learning skills if you find the spots where they can do that. Mm-hmm. And the skills they learn will be super useful for you to get food. So if you have all the cups with you, you will realize that the game is even easier than having just one. We didn't want the game to be a score mission where you have to bring them from point A to point B, and then that could be very annoying because you have to take care of them, and they also will be asking for food. I mean, we wanted to avoid that, so that's why we gave them the skills. So the game becomes kind of a Metroidvania where your tools or your weapons are your caps, because you will use them.
Yeah. I lose them quite early because I was following the scent, and then the next day it seems that the food was really hard to find.
Yeah, well, we don't want to lie to anybody. Like, the game, although it's super cute and the graphics are cartoony and it may be very appealing for young audiences, it's also telling a harsh story about how we are destroying environments. And of course, well, the name itself is telling you the plot, right? Like, Endling.
Yeah, it was. It was like, I most likely will die because it's called Endling. But the end still surprised me, because I was like, oh, okay, now it's done, game over kind of feel, and then you still walk like 5 minutes of path of death, basically.
Yeah, we were afraid that some people would quit the game while there is this first ending, but yeah, there's an epilogue after that. So yeah, I hope everybody play that. I mean, we have been watching streams in Twitch or YouTube since the release date, and looks like nobody missed the real ending of the game.
Especially when you stream it would be fine. It's I don't think it's. But you're talking about the art style, right? So how, like you say, like you already in the beginning knew that you wanted kind of a cartoony, more colorful also art style, or like how did that came to life?
Well, we wanted to have like big contrast between the environments and the caps. So that's why everything related to the fox family is super warm, bright colors. Well, if you get into the foxhole, for instance, into the shelter, you will see that the lights is super warm and all that stuff, because we wanted to create some emotion, like different emotions, like being outside the shelter and being exposed to the dangers and all that stuff compared to being in the shelter. It was very important that the art style could deliver this kind of emotions, and that's why we decided to have like super cold colors in the outside, while in the shelter there is always something very warm.
Were it all the seasons that you showed? Because I noticed that suddenly when I took the other shelter, then the game was like in a different time, basically, like different season.
Yeah, the rest, well, the game starts at winter. Well, eventually spring comes and the snow gets melted and you have different paths to explore because they get open. Yeah, we wanted to show how the environment changes, not only because of the weather, something that happens, but also because how the humans are changing the environment. For instance, there is a river and you can fish there. That's very useful because your caps can eat fish there, but at some point you can see some trash.
Quite dirt.
Yeah, and it gets plenty of trash and the fish die and you cannot fish anymore. And yeah, so all the environments are meant to change in order to encourage the player to keep moving forward, trying to find that place where caps can be safe, right?
But like the story of the cup that is missing, that's sometimes very vague. What exactly happened?
Well, we didn't want to be super obvious with the story. We wanted the player to explore the different events, and if you find all the events happening in the game and you follow all the scenes, when you unlock a gallery, well, have a look at them closely and take your time to try to figure out what's happening. Because at the end of the day, the main character is a fox, and foxes cannot understand human language and cannot understand really well what's happening in the surroundings. The only motivation for the mother fox is to track her missing cub and to look for food for her and her cubs. So yeah, everything which is happening in the surroundings, like environmental storytelling, is telling you a very important message, but at the same time, it's not something that the mother fox would be worried about. She's there just surviving.
Yeah, but she's focusing on it quite a lot on the other side, because, well, after 3 days, she often just get like a flashback, like, wait, I need to smell my cup. So it is quite of a focus of the mother, it seems. The other cup died and then she doesn't really care anymore, no sniffing at that moment, but for the other one, still following the purple line, basically.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, eventually you get that purple scent that leads you to the cup, but you also have to look for the remaining cups, right? You have to take care of them, and that's the most important thing for you. At some point, well, you will start getting those purple scents, and let's say the main quest, finding your missing cup, evolves, and you can progress in the game through following that scent. That you can completely ignore if you like. I mean, if you want to focus on saving the rest of the cups, that's okay.
Yeah, but it's quite in your face. So I basically lost my other cups because I was so focused on that one. I thought that was kind of was that on purpose, or was it just by accident that combination of days were like either I focus on the scent or on the food?
No, indeed, we wanted the player to have this decision of following a scent or trying to find food, but at the same time we didn't want to be very punishing for the players, so we tried to lead the players with the purple scent to those places where maybe in their way to finding their cup would find even more food for the rest of the litter. We are not that bad, you know.
Okay, I was just very unlucky at that time, I see. One time because I was so focused on I needed to be on time back, and I also had a day that I found out that, when it's still morning, it's still fine, you're just running around. So that was kind of, I felt a bit like, wait a minute, I focused so long on getting back during nighttime, like, wait, I could have still got some more time to save my cups for a longer time.
I wouldn't recommend that because during the day there are more dangers. Humans start spawning a lot, so it's safer if you try to get food during the night. After all, well, foxes are nocturnal animals, so you have enough time to look for food during the night and try to avoid the dangers of the day.
How long is the time, or is it always a bit variable?
The night time is around 4 minutes. As you said, you can keep playing during the day, but I wouldn't recommend that at all. You can do it if you are in some place or you're even hidden from some human or whatever. You can stay outside of the shelter for a longer time, but eventually, well, your caps will start start. I mean, the nutrition bar of the caps keeps decreasing, so you are not getting anything positive from staying outside.
Yeah, it was more the day that suddenly the other shelters were destroyed, and I was like, oh no, the shelter far away is only like safe to go to. So that was the moment that I thought, oh, I die, because like the night was over, and then it was like, oh, I can still get home. Oh, okay. So that was a surprise.
Well, in one of the first version of the game, there was like a fade to black when they came, so we forced the players to move back to the shelter. But then we thought, why not to let them explore if they like? I mean, if there is some important reason for them to keep exploring, even if the day is more dangerous, then that's okay. Let's give freedom to players. So yeah, our intention was to let the player know that days are more dangerous, and the correct way to play the game is to try to hunt during the night and avoid the days. But if you still want to do it, I mean, it's up to you.
But do you need more food if you stay up longer?
You can stay longer and get more food, but it will be food that you will not have in the next day because you are getting rid of all the food. So that's not the best way to play the game, although you can do it.
Well, it was more like I was surprised that happened, and I was like, oh, okay, I maybe could have played it in a different way. So that's nice. Yeah, and when you have one cup, you don't need that much food. So that's what I found out. When you have like a lot of cups, you need a lot of food.
So you finished the game with only one cup. That's very interesting.
Yes, I did. No, it was in the beginning randomly, suddenly hard to find the food because it seemed to spawn random, and my cups didn't want to learn stuff, only jumping. And when I finally got the thing that my cup could get inside something, that cup of course died, because that was the most useful skill. That was something that was like shit, but I want my cup to learn stuff, but I needed to have that event, but I didn't have that event.
If you manage to keep your cups alive, they will learn to climb trees and to dig food from the ground.
Oh yeah, climbing trees I had as well, yeah.
Yeah, so there are many skills that are useful for you to get food. So I think if you finish the game with only one cup, that's like the hard mode, because it's very... Although it's true that feeding one cup is easier than feeding 3 of them, since they will help you get food. At the end, it's the other way around. Like, the more cups you have, you will have access to more different kind of foods.
Okay, maybe I should replay it. Was that the reason for like replayability to have this in the game?
Well, the game actually is a short story. You can beat the game in 4 hours. We wanted to add variability in a way that some players may be interested in going through the game again, trying to unlock the different secrets or the different events that are happening around. You can open the map every day and see the places where there are events happening, and you may miss some of them. Actually, you can miss them all, but they are telling you like stories about how humans are suffering the consequences of how we have treated the world, right? So it's very interesting to have a look at those events and try to create like a story in your mind.
Okay, so your studio were like first 2 people and then 20 new people came in. So how did that change the game? Because I can imagine a lot of new people with new ideas.
Yeah, but to be honest, when we started the development of the game, after the conception phase, which was quite long, during that conception phase we were hiring freelancers and we didn't have like a proper real team, right? Because until we had funds, we didn't start like hiring people. We established the base of the game and we knew how the game would be in the future and how much money we would need for that and how many people we will need, how much people will need to create it. So it's not like if we started creating the game and eventually, hey, well, we are 20 people, no, let's do something new, or let's add some new mechanic or whatever. But the game was already planned. That's the reason why we hired 20 people and not the other way around.
Fair enough. I see. Will you continue with this kind of games, or are like maybe next time you have other animal, or is it? Can you say something about that, or is that too much speculation?
We don't want to be a studio creating Fox games,
Not? Why not?
Could be, but we have a lot of ideas and cool ideas about other games we want to do. We are developing right now the next title. It's not about foxes, but it's a game telling things that we couldn't talk in Endling. We didn't want to stick to one genre of game. We wanted to explore different things. And we still think that our community, the community that we have created and which has gathered around us for the last 3 years, they will appreciate the game because it's very aligned with what we have done with Endling. And it's again a very emotional title.
Your signature is like, we want to dive into emotions. Well, what makes it still your game? Like, what needs to be in the game for you?
Of course, creating a fun game is super complicated too, right? But trying to raise emotions is something very important, and I think it's something that hasn't been exploited a lot in this medium, in video games. And that's something we want to do. We want to create games that could leave a mark on players, and after playing Endling, for instance, you get something, right? You a bit different than when you started the game. So that's very important for us. And that's something that we want to repeat in our future games.
Do you have some go-to tricks to generate emotions?
That's super hard to say, right? Because every game is different, and also every person is different, and what may be emotional for somebody, it isn't for other people. But of course, like, creating a bond between the player and the character for a long time is very important. I mean, in Endling, we decided to let the player be able to see how the mother fox give birth to the cubs. You can even customize the color of the cubs. So that way we leave the player to create this bond from the very beginning, right? So after 5 minutes of gameplay, you are still super attached emotionally to the cubs, and it's like that for the rest of the adventure. Although it's not a super long game, every minute of the game is reinforcing this idea of getting connected to the cubs.
So what was your target audience for this game?
We want to reach people who may be interested in eco-conscious message, and people who could be worried in the same way we were about social impact issues, but not interested in getting all this information through documentaries, for instance, and enjoy the experience and get emotionally with video games and interested in learning some message from video games. I know the game some people may play the game with their children. That's something super cool because it's a very educational game, but at the same time the story is very, very hard, so it's not a game a child could play alone because of how emotional it is, right? I mean, we don't want any parent to feel bad because they left their children play with Endling and suddenly their sons are crying or something.
Wow, to be honest, Bambi is also very sad story, to be honest, and we also watched it as a kid.
Yeah, well, that's why we keep talking about Bambi, right? Because it's a Disney movie, but at the same time it's super sad. Of course, it's also telling you a message, right? So it was kind of an inspiration for us to be able to do this, like creating a very cute entertainment product that at the same time could raise a lot of emotions. I guess every time there are more and more movies, TV shows doing this, like trying to get the spectator emotional with the story. That's very cool.
Does Bambi has influenced the game, or like what was the inspiration of the game?
We had many inspirations, like other movies and video games, and the inspiration came from everywhere, but at the same time we tried to tell our own story. And we had like a research about how the future could be in the following 100 years, and you get enough information from researching about real facts that could happen in the future, and you don't need to focus on what has already been told in other games or movies, right? The thing is that reality or the expectation of the future is even worse than anything that we have already said in the past. So basically the inspiration came from this research about how the future could be, and there were so many things that were worrying and we could talk about, and we had to decide and choose which ones we wanted to tell in the video game. That was quite sad. Like
the future of humanity, basically what you almost see is that they're all poor. I think that's what I noticed, right? Like it's like still it's very environmental friendly, but the people don't really look happy or whatsoever. They're just really angry and try to, like, for example, the one with the flame torch want to just flame stuff, but it seems to have no reason why he's doing.
We try to give reasons to everything we add in the game, especially because adding those kind of events for us is very expensive, so we didn't want to invest our time and energy into creating something that was just there because. But we wanted every event of the game to be telling something about the background and the lore of the game. We have created this future where humans in the past tried to be eco-friendly and tried to save the world. That's why there are so many remainings and leftovers of green energy, like solar panels and windmills and stuff like that. But eventually all that didn't work. It was too late for humanity. Basically, the society collapsed. The environmental issues forced a lot of people to migrate. Most of the people you will see in the game are climate refugees, and indeed there is a refugee camp in the game. They are just trying to survive. So they are, just as you are, victims of what happened to the war, and the only thing they can do at those conditions is to try to survive in the same way you are. Of course, they will do whatever it's in their hands to do it, like they will kill you or they will try to eat you or whatever, but that's life, right? If you get to this point where there is no hope and your only awareness is to survive, well, you will do whatever is in your hands to do it. You are forced to keep moving for war, and you get to the desert where there is like a lot of refugees in the background walking, and the idea is that after everything, after all, there is no distinction between who you were in the past and where you have been working, because in that tree in the background where they are all doing this travesty through the desert, well, there are workers from the farms, workers from the factory, there are scientific refugees, there's all of the characters of the game are walking in the same direction, right? So if we destroy the world, it doesn't matter who you are, it will affect you in the same way. All are taking the same path, right? Even the victim is doing that.
It feels very apocalyptic in that way.
Yeah, well, it's apocalyptic, but at the same time, there isn't an apocalyptic event, like there isn't like a war or whatever. But at the same time, the destruction of the environment is enough to create like an apocalyptic world.
Like your second home, that almost feels like an aeroplane propeller, that kind of an old propeller. Is that true, or is that just my imagination?
No, that's an air filter. That's some of those technologies that humans tried to be more eco-friendly and try to create a lot of those air filters in order to try to save the world, but it failed. So that's one of the leftovers of this technology that we try to use, and that we are supposed to be trying to use in the future if we want to avoid that, right? The thing is that even if we take that direction which is the right one, we may be too late if we don't act right now.
So, and if we are talking about the future, is it like in 50 years later or 100? Like what was the mindset for the future?
I hope it's later. I hope it's in 200 years. But when we were developing the game, we created, like, I think it was 2020 when we created the first level of the game, the arson. Right. And suddenly, while we were doing that, there were like a lot of wildfires in Australia and California, in Spain here as well. The world was in flames, and we were super worried because we thought, well, we are being super explicit in this arson, but at the same time, it's happening all around, and maybe something that we considering to happen in the following 20 years is already happening now. So yeah, we base the game on scientific predictions about how the real world could be in the following 100 years. But some of those events may come earlier than we expected.
I see. Just the imagination of what if the future going AWOC, that was the inspiration of the creation, right?
Yeah. It's fun because there are some websites and there is a lot of documentation about how we expect the world to be in the following years, and there are even timelines and stuff like that which were very inspirational for us because all of them are talking about how the humans will be, right? There is, for instance, a lot of people migrating from one place to another because suddenly the place where they used to live are not habitable anymore, where that will be a problem for other countries, right? And that will affect everybody. Yeah, that's why you have this feeling of everybody being poor, and that's right. I mean, if people is trying to survive and there is not enough work for everybody, we all will suffer that. I remember being in an interview and we had like a slide in our presentation about what kind of topics we were talking about in Endling, and one of those topics was unemployment. Yeah, retired people, and everybody was laughing. Like, have you done a game about retired? And we were like, yeah, well, you can laugh now, but let's see in 50 years, right? If you have any kind of retirement salary or whatever. So it's something that may come to us even faster than we expect, and that's very, very sad.
Yeah, I hope that's not the future what I played. To be honest, that would be terrifying. Not all the humans are bad. So was that like that's kind of interesting. What was the idea behind that?
We didn't want to show the humans as bad people, just being evil. They are survivors, as I mentioned before. Molly is one of them, but she's very young and she's very innocent, and she doesn't. I mean, she can, like any children, they can be giving more than they expect to receive, right? And it's not the same for her father, for instance, who is trying to save her. He will do whatever he can in order to achieve that. That includes killing you if he can. So yeah, every character has a very human story in their background. If you follow the steps and the stands, and you can see what's happening to them and what their motivation is in order to do what they are doing.
What was the biggest challenge by making this game?
Trying to be authentic with the game. Like it will have been very easy for the designers to let the player use the folks as if it was human, like pulling levers or having the ability to resolve complex puzzles, but that's not how folks could act. So the hardest thing I think it was to create game situations that could be resolved by a fox, and in a way that the fox is not something magical, like being just a real fox, because we wanted the player to make clear that the world that they are playing in is something that may be real in the future. So that's why we avoided to include any kind of magical element or something that could break the fantasy of being a mother fox.
And what was the biggest design challenge in it? Felt that is going to be in the game, and that kind of after a certain time you were like, okay, this is not fitting the theme, or it's not fitting what we had in mind?
Yeah, I think that this, which I was mentioning, like we had some puzzles in the game, some things that the player would need to resolve in order to progress. But then at some point we thought, okay, maybe because it was very challenging for us to create puzzles for the game and at the same time to keep authentic. So we got rid of all that and had to change our mindset and think, okay, this is not a puzzle game. That's okay. I mean, it doesn't need to be a puzzle game in order to be a good game. Let's forget about all that. And let's create an experience where the more folks could be resolving some situations without having to be a puzzle. So that's why the survival part of the game and the Metroidvania part of the game got more important in detriment or losing that puzzle solving that we had at the beginning. That was one of the main changes that we had in the design.
Also, like the audio, like what was the was it also out? Was it from the people that just came later, or was that already kind of in your minds how it needs to sound?
I would say that the audio is something that came very early in the game. We didn't want to leave that to the end, because if we were already like lacking tools in order to tell the story and to create situations that a fox could resolve by herself, we didn't want to miss the opportunity to create that kind of things with the audio. For instance, music and sounds is something that humans and animals share. Like animals can enjoy music as well as we do. So we wanted to bring a lot of emotions through the soundtrack, and that's why we got in touch with Manel Gil, who is one of the composers, a super cool composer here in Barcelona. He helped us to create this soundtrack, and then the sound designer in-house that we had, who is also the narrative designer of the game, provided a lot of insight about how we could manage to create this bond and to emphasize this bond between the mother cub and the baby foxes and the player as well through the soundtrack. And for instance, each one of the cubs represents a different instrument, and if you lose one of those cubs, then that instrument is gone forever. So the soundtrack changes and adapts, and it gets way more sad if you finish the game with only one cub, for instance, than if you do it with 4 cubs.
Yeah, I thought that I played a very sad game. So
yeah, so probably maybe you didn't notice because you lose them very early, maybe, but there are some instruments at the beginning of the game that you are hearing day after day, and suddenly when a cub dies, it stops and you will never hear that instrument again, right? Because it's gone forever. And yeah, we also had the help from Tina Wu and Rosanda Panfili, who are violinist and cellist and violinist from the Hans Zimmer Orchestra, and they are super talented and perform the soundtrack. We try to give as much emotion as we could through the sound sound and music to the game as we could.
And how did you how was the playtesting of this? Because it's like hard to playtest in the first stages, or like how did you manage that? Because it's a journey.
Yeah, well, our publisher had like a QA team, and they had been playtesting the game a lot. And at the beginning, we focused on the gameplay aspects of the game, so making sure that the game was interesting and fun to play. Of course, the emotional part couldn't be assessed until the game had like all the art and all that stuff, right? Because the music and the art is part of the experience, and the animations, of course. The animations of the ending of the game, for instance, were developed a few months before the release. So how can you say that the end will be emotional if you don't have any animation on that? But you have to create to make like an exercise of imagination and to believe in what you are doing and try to figure out how it will be before it's done. And eventually we had to bring like fresh testers, because you cannot test emotions with some people who has been playing the game once and again for 3 years, right?
Yeah.
So it was very interesting to bring new people and see what they thought about the game.
And what did the playtesting like change, or like that you were like, oh, you were surprised by that has a total different outcome in my head than in the playtester's head?
Well, there were things that we changed because of the playtesting. The QA team was always giving feedback about what could be improved and what not in order to create a better experience. And one of the things that they told us is that the map is expanding. I mean, it's not a super huge map, that the camera is rotating and the map is bigger and bigger every time as you play. People tends to get lost by the end of the game. You don't know where you are and where is your shelter. You have 3 different shelters, and it's very hard to navigate from one to another if you don't remember exactly where you are, right? And there is some people who is able to create a mental map, and that was part of the experience as well, like allowing the player to explore and to look at the landmarks on the environment to try to know where they are. Maybe it was very challenging, so that we decided to add a map. The map that you can see in the game if you press the M on the keyboard.
Yeah, I started using it quite late, and I think that's why I missed some events.
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
So, yes, because I was like, oh, this time I go left, and this time I go right, and this time, oh, I didn't have this route. And later I was like, wait a minute, maybe now at this moment it's getting a bit more scary. Let's use the map. And I was like, oh, there are also like really good signs on the map. It's like, oh, damn.
Yeah.
So that's,
and also the signs are placed in some locations that are encouraging the player to look for those places, and we try to leave some reward there, like some food for the players if they explore the places. So yeah, the map makes things a bit easier. I was afraid that a lot of people would be exploiting the map, like using it all the time, like taking a path and checking the map. I am walking in the right direction or not, and that's something that some people told us. Like, since I knew the map was there, I couldn't stop using it.
Yeah, I mean later on, but later on I didn't have that many events or things anymore to do, and then it was more like I just need to get back to more harder home to get. So then it's like you really like, oh wait, I need to go this way and this way. You don't want to die. I mean you can die in this game, right? Or is it?
Yeah, well, if your caps die, then you die as well. Also, you can get hunt by some human or by a dog, or you can get shot. So yeah, there are different ways to die for you and your caps.
Yeah, I had with the shooter, I have a bit of the feeling with the old Batman Arkham Asylum, the enemy with first the light and then you need to get away behind the shadow. Was that one of the inspirations for the enemy?
Well, I think it's a very simple stealth mechanic, like having turret or a tower there trying to shoot you. That's something that I mean, it's not anything new, but I think it was fitting very well the game, because Endling is not a super challenging game. I mean, it's a survival game, but at the same time you can find the food almost everywhere, although it may scarce at some point, but it's not very, very hard. We wanted to keep the same way of having a stealth, but in a simplified way where you just have to hide from the light and that's it. I mean, it's not the intention for us to create a hardcore game.
People that watch this is mostly they're thinking about starting their indie studio, or they are like having their indie studio. Like, what would be your advice for starting an indie studio?
I would say that that the most important thing is to have a clear idea about what you have to do and what's the price of that and how much time it will cost you. I mean, it's super important to not start working on something without having a clear idea of what you are doing, right? Having a very, very solid design, knowing exactly which profiles and which roles you will need. Maybe you want to do a game that you can do alone by yourself. That's completely right. But if you think that things will start getting complicated and you cannot do anything, and I mean everything by yourself, and you will need people, then it's when things start getting complicated, because you will need a lot of money and a lot of time, and you will need to find people who you can trust in. I mean, the company part, even if it's an indie studio, at the end of the day, it's a company that you have to manage, and that's super hard. And most people tends to forget about that and just think on the creativity part, like, hey, I want to make video games, and as long as I enjoy doing video games, that will be right. Yeah, until you have to pay bills, right?
Yeah, I think that when I checked also the Steam comments, I think most people were very excited about the game, but there were some people that were like, oh, but it's less than 4 hours, why it's $30 price, basically.
Yeah, it's one of the things that we got, one of the feedbacks we got, like, it's a short experience, but it was, I mean, we didn't want to create a longer experience. We wanted to add as much production value as we could in the shortest time we could. We didn't want to create a longer experience just because it would be better for the sales. If the message that we want to say is appropriate or is good for a 4-hour experience, that's okay. And that way we make sure that the emotion will be there, and everybody can enjoy the best experience they can with the most events and the most condensated things that we could bring, without having like a super long game where half of the time nothing is happening.
Yeah, I think it was good because it was for me like, at that moment when I found the map, I found all the events, and it felt like, oh, I don't have anything more to do. I just wanted to have the end story of my cup, and then so I was on that moment of like, it was perfect timing. But maybe that was also because I had one cup for a long time, so it was like less.
You have to play it again. Yeah,
I need
you
to
have
play
to
it
try
again.
it again.
Yes, I will play it again. How did you personally rolled into the game industry?
Well, I am a computer science student. I was a computer science study in 27 or so. Like, wow, it has been a long time. And eventually one of my teachers told me, hey, I'm creating a video games studio in Barcelona, so I'm looking for some people to join us. And I basically asked him, how much do I need to pay you to get into your studio? Because that was something that I wanted to do. So I started as an intern. I started an internship here. Eventually I started changing from one studio to another until I realized that what I really wanted to do is create my own games. So that's why I started like a Patreon campaign, and I called my former colleague Pablo and told him, hey, I need a logo for this project I'm working on, and would you like to do the logo? And he told me, no, you're crazy, I want to join the game, let's create a studio. So yeah, it was perfect timing for us to create the company.
Well, that's perfect, and I think you succeed very well. And I'm looking
Thank
forward to other games with an emotional journey. The other game will also take like 3 years, or is it going to be faster, or what's going to be the time frame?
We hope we can release the game within 3 years, but yeah, it will be a long journey again. I mean, video games take their time. I was watching a video interview, but they were talking about the video game development process and the video games industry, and they were talking about some other studio, a very successful studio. They created a beautiful and super cool game, and people was complaining because, hey, we don't know anything about this studio for the last 2 years. Probably they stopped making video games or something. I was thinking, wow, if you knew what they are working on right now. I mean, they have not announced that, but they have been working for 2 years in something which is beautiful. And yeah, but people don't know, right? And creating a video game is something that that takes a lot of time, and most of the time people is working under the hood and without advertising their games because they are just not ready to be shown. But yeah, when you can already say, hey, we are working on this game, you have been working on that for 2 years. So you need a lot of patience.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, you need a lot of patience to make games. That's totally true. But any last advice for starters in the game industry?
Try to validate the idea you have as soon as possible, because you may have some idea that you think is super cool, but you will not know until somebody from outside tells you, hey, this is super good, and it was working on this, right? So for us, it was showing our game or first demo to publishers and to potential investors, not only friends, because friends will usually tell you what you want to hear, right? But if you can talk to a publisher or somebody who is out to spend money in your game, they give you the green light. Like, even if it's not ready to be invested in, for instance, maybe it's too early, and they tell you keep working on this, but that's quite good already. It's very important, because otherwise you will be spending all your savings and all your time and efforts into something that maybe is not, it's only interesting for you, right?
Yeah.
It's okay if that's your goal, if you want to create games for yourself, but if you want to get into the industry and create a company, you want to know that the game you're working on, and with no doubt it will be very painful, stressing to create, and then you would like to know that it has potential, right? So it's very important having somebody from outside telling you and giving you advice about what you're creating.
Yeah, I totally agree. I always tell my students that don't make something that you say, oh, I make this with myself as target audience, because that's just the biggest trap for a game designer, I think.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for this interview. I hope everyone enjoyed this interview. If you have more questions, please leave them in the comments, and then see you in the next interview. Thank you, Gabe, for being here. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye-bye.